This is Gemara in Kesubos Daf Mem Dalid, and we're holding on the very top of Mem Dalid Amud Aleph. Yesterday we actually read the top two lines. We just didn't have the Gemara in front of us, so we'll read them again. And this is answering up the kasha from yesterday, which will come clear in a moment, because the Gemara is going to delve a bit deeper into this topic. The topic when there are two potential Kesubos written for a woman of two different values. How do we deal with that? So on the top line of Mem Dalid Amud Aleph, we read yesterday that Achanami and Utaima Del Gavya. Why do you not collect over here in the case that there's two Kesubos of 300 and 200? And the Gemara just finished saying you don't actually collect a full 500, it means either 3 or 2. So the reason you don't get 2 from the first ksuba and 1 from the second ksuba, says the Gemara, is midlo kasev la, because he did not write to her aisifes lach mea amasayim. He didn't write I'm adding on 100 to the 200. Achuli achalta l'shibuda kama. He did not say I'm adding on 100 to the 200. What does he mean? He means Achuli, I want you to be Michael the first Shiba. That is what's going on in this case of the 200 and 300. And again, that'll get a little clearer, as right now we're going to delve a bit deeper into this din. Amar Mar, says the Gemara, going into this din of Rav Huna, the din of Rav Huna, in which a woman comes and a woman has two different ksubais, one for 200 and one for 300. And how do we reconcile? How does she collect, etc.? So says Amar Mar, quoting Rav Huna, if she wants to collect from the 200 ksubas she caught, and she'll collect from the first date, the 300 from the second date. And let's remind ourselves, what does it mean first date and second date? What's discussing over here is the shibud, is the lien, is that whenever someone is obligated to pay someone else, not only does he have to pay them cash, his properties are mishubad, his properties is a lien on that property. So says the Gemara, the husband wrote 3 or 200, the woman could decide she could collect 200 from the first date and get the lien on the properties from the first date, or she collect 300 from the second date and collect from the properties of the second date. So says the Gemara, that's the din of Rav Huna. So asks the Gemara, Lema obligi de Rav Nachman. Let us say that Rav Huna is arguing on Rav Nachman. What's Rav Nachman? Damar Rav Nachman, explains Rav Nachman, Shnei shtaros hayotzim zecher zeh. If there are two shtaros that are produced, that come out one after another, two shtaros on one field, and there are two different dates on the shtaros. The halacha is a bitel sheni es harishon. The second shtar on this field is mivatel the first one. Let's look at Rashi for a moment before we explain. Rashi, 6 lines into the narrow line, says shtei shtaros shel sada echad, of one field shel mecher oy matana, that the field was either sold or given away. Because von Ruvain l'shimon echad b'nisan echad b'sheni. Echad b'Nisan, echad b'Sivan, excuse me. So Rav Nachman says, Bitel Sheni is as Rishon. The second shtar is mevatel, nullifies the first one. In kasav lo yachrayis, v'tarfua mimenu ein gaiva ela mizman sheni. This only are able to collect from the second one. So says our Gemara, Rav Huna seemingly arguing on this din of Rav Nachman, as Rashi articulates. V'chanami neima, according to Rav Nachman, what would he say in the case of Rav Huna? Rishon batalei, the first one is batal. So says the Gemara, Rav Huna, that said she's allowed to collect from either date, 200 from date 1 or 300 from date 2, is seemingly not like the din of Rav Nachman. Explains the Gemara, not so fast, 8 lines down. First one line is Harishon Mem Daled Mem Aleph. Lav mi itmar Allah. Did we not learn? Amar Abato Moed Rav Nachman, says Rav Papa, that Rav Nachman admits the Oysiv Bey, that if in the second document there's a Haisafa, he adds on Dikla Litaisef as one palm tree as an addition to the second shtar, then, Litaisef as Kasve. If there's something additional in the shtar, then he means he did not write the second shtar to nullify the first shtar. Rather, why did he write the second shtar? He wrote the second shtar as a Taisefes to add on to the first shtar. So says the Gemara, that's similar to what Rav Huna. Ha chanami, so too by us in the case of Rav Huna. Ha oisef la midi, he's adding on in the second shtar. So says the Gemara, we do not have to say that Rav Huna is arguing arguing on Rav Nachman. They both get to coexist simultaneously because we're going with the understanding of Rav Papa that if there's an addition to star number 2, then star number 2 does not nullify, does not make null and void the first document. Rather, it adds on to the first document. Similar to Rav Huna, that the second document adds on the 300 to the 200. Beautiful. So we started today with Rav Huna. We asked Rav Huna or Rav Nachman should be arguing. We proved Rav Nachman's not arguing. So Gufa, now let's go into the din of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman sheishar zeyotim zachar zez abitel sheni is arishain. Excuse me, bitel sheni is arish. The second one is mevatel. The first one Amar Papa. Omayt Rav Nachman is what we just read. The Yosef Ladikla the Tosefes Kasve. He wrote it for it Tosefes. Asks the Gemara Pshita. The din of Rav Papa's avi is rish. Excuse me. One more time. Pshita, the following is obvious. Rishain b'mecher, v'sheni b'matana. If the first document says that someone bought the field, the second document says the field was gifted, then liyapois koichayu. The second document has more power than the first document because of lay. Why? Misham dina dvar metzra. Because the second document has an advantage over document number 1 because there's no din debar metzra. The din debar metzra is that when you buy something, that halacha is you have to offer it to the neighbor first. So if I have a deed that I bought something for you, that document is not so strong. Because if I bought something for you, a neighboring property could come and say, no, I came before you. You bought it, but I come first. I have the din debar metzra. And he would win. But if I get something as a matana, if I get something as a gift, there's no din debar metzra. You can't, because why? What's the svara of bar metzra? It's very logical. The logic of bar metzra is, why are you going to buy this field? I'm so close to it, it means more to me. Go buy a field elsewhere. But that logic only applies to a sale. But a matana, it doesn't make any sense. What am I going to tell you? Get a gift of this field elsewhere. This was the field I gifted. So if document number 1 was a sale and document number 2 was a gift, then document number 2 adds on to document number 1 that there's no din debar metzra. For kolshkin, and certainly if the opposite, if rishon was a matana and sheni was a mecher, there's also an advantage that what because of the din of Baal Chayv, meaning that the halacha of a mecher, when you buy something, all the fields are mishubad. There's a lien on the properties. So there's an element that a sale is greater, because now I can collect in the event that I lose this field for more than chasim mishubadimu to kasav kain. That's why he read it. But what's the question? Then bitel sheni es harishain. Rav Nachman's din. Now we're getting clarity on the din of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman's din that the second document makes the first null and void, says the Gemara, is if they're both mecher, both matana. That's the reason. If one is mecher, one is matana, whether first is mecher, second matana, first matana, second mecher, then there is always an advantage of the other, whether it's the din of bar metzah that is no longer in the case of matana, whether it is the fact that you collect from encumbered properties in the case of a sale. But says the Gemara, if they're both mecher or both matana, then the second deed makes the first a null and void. My taima, says the Gemara, what is the reason? Rafram explains, let us say the reason why the second one makes the first one null and void is that he admits to him that the first one is nothing. That's why he wrote a second. No, we say that by writing and accepting a second document, you're waiving the right from the first document. My beinayu, what's the practical difference in Rafram and Ravacha? Three different practical ramifications. Number 1, arure sadi, if the witnesses become disqualified. So if we're going, according to Rafram, that you're admitting that the first deed, the first document was fraudulent, was nothing, then it makes the Eidim puzzle. That's difference number 1. Whereas according to Rav Acha, it is not. Difference number 2 is the Shlumei Peri, the repayment of fruits. Again, if we're saying that the first document was nothing, then I have to repay you for everything that you ate within that time period. And number 3 is Zulataska, is the property tax. Now it's the opposite. Is the property tax that the first document was nothing, then then the buyer didn't own it yet. Therefore, he does not have to pay taxes in the interim. Says the Gemara, "May have Allah." What is the Maisa? The Maskana. May have Allah Diksuba. What is the Maskana with regard to Ksuba? To Hashemadam, Rav Yudah, Rav Shmuel, Misham Elazar, Rav Shimon, Mana Masayim, Min Eirisim, V'Teisevis Min Anisuim. Rav Elazar, it says in name Rav Shimon, the first ikr, the main part of the Ksuba, comes from Eirisin, like we said, and the addition comes from Nisuin. V'Chachamim argue, Chamaybrim Echadzeh, V'Echadzeh Min Nisuin. You collect everything from Nisuin. V'Hilchazah, obviously like the Chachamim, Echadzeh, V'Echadzeh Min Nisuin. Absolutely beautiful. Says the Gemara. Now we begin a new topic, a topic that has to do with the din of Moitzi Shemra. The din is that if someone speaks badly of another, accusing them falsely. So we begin the Mishnah on the bottom of Memdalid Amid Aleph. Hagi Yoirish and Isgaira. If a woman becomes a Giyorish, she becomes a convert. Bita Ima, her daughter converts with her. Vizinsa, and then the daughter is Mizaneh. The daughter is married, not fully married, is Eirisin. She, as Rashi points out, Be'erisin, Vizinsa Be'erisin, Vihinaira, she's a Naira. What's the halacha? Harehi Bechanek. This girl, she's now a Giores, and she committed adultery at some level because she had Eirisin, and now she's Mizaneh. What's the halacha? She's Chayiv, the death penalty, Chanek, strangulation. Ein la, and she does not get Loi Pesach Beis Av, V'loi Meyasela. She does not get the halacha that she has to be executed by the door of her father's house, because she has no father's house, as Rashi says, as actually the Gemara will speak out. V'lo meyasela, and she does not have a din that she gets the 100 selah if it's not true. Again, someone comes out and says she was Mizana. Who comes out? Her husband. She did Eirisin. She's married. The husband says, my wife was Mizana. So if it's found to be true, she's Chayamisa. If it's found to not to be true, then normally the halacha is, if someone defames another, you have to pay Meya Selah, 100 Selah. In this case, she does not collect 100 Selah. And we'll see, of course, in the Gemara, the reason being, as Rashi, 4 lines to the bottom, points out, the Meya Selah would be if we find out that they're lying. And the reason is, Rashi already gives us the clue, the Kula Parsha be Yisrael, Ksiva told by Yisrael, and she's a Giyaris. Continues the Mishnah, Haisa Hirasa Shalai Bikdusha Vleidasa Bikdusha. A difficult topic. She was Hirasa, she became pregnant while she was a guy, and then Vleidasa, she gave birth, Bikdushasa, when she was a Yid. What is the halacha? And who are we referring to? Referring to the mother, the woman who became a ger. So she's pregnant, and then she becomes a ger. What is halacha now? So she gives birth while she's a yid. So is the baby a yid because her mother's a yid? Or do we say no? The fact that the baby was conceived while this woman was a guy, therefore it's not. What's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Harezeh biskila. If eventually this girl is going to be one that is mizaneh, she's going to be chayiv skila. Ve'in lo pesach beisav v'lo meyasela. Again, she does not have the status of a full-fledged yid, as we'll see in the Gemara. Let's say a woman becomes a ger, and then she becomes pregnant, and then she has a baby. So everything happened while she was a yid. It was all big kedusha. Then arehi kebas Yisrael l'chol devreha. Her baby is 100% a yid. Yeshla, and now the last part of the Mishnah discusses what is the halacha if Yeshla av ve'in lo pesach beis av. If a girl who commits adultery has a father but doesn't have a pesach beis av, the halacha is, as we're going to explain in the Gemara at length, that a girl who is mizana, as we spoke about already, she gets misa. We're at the door of her father's house to show this is the house that brought up such a girl. But let's say she has her father, but her father does not have a house, or the father has a house, but she does not have a house. She does not have a father. Why not? Because the father was nifter. Then she does not get chenin. She gets skila. L'nemer pesach beis av elo l'mitzvah. It's only a mitzvah for her to get. It only says Pesach Beisav, that is a din of skila at the door of her father's house as a mitzvah. And now let's turn over to Mem Dalet and Beis and learn a bit of the Mekayers, the sources of that which we just learned in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara of Nani, immediately we begin with the halacha, as Rashi points out, that she was conceived Shalai B'Kedusha while she was a guy and she gives birth as a Yid. How do we know that the halacha here is that she does not have the status of a full-fledged Yid, and therefore if that girl eventually is Mizana, that she gets skila? Says the Gemara, Amrei Shlakish Damar Kro Misa. The pasuk says that if one is mizana, we can look at Rashi. We can actually look at the pasuk for a moment. They take her out and they stone her. And the people of her city, and she dies. She did a terrible act in Klal Yisrael, and we have to rid Klal Yisrael of such an act. So it says the Gemara, word Mesa, and she shall die. The rabbis, that comes to include that even though she's not a full-fledged Yid, I might have said that incorrectly in the Mishnah. I said in the Mishnah that she's not a full-fledged Yid. It's true, but still she gets skila. Asks the Gemara, and this is the point we were alluding to. Yachi Milkanami Malki. Says the Gemara, if you're telling me we have a reboy that the pasuk is coming to include her, that she has a din of a yid, so then the halacha should be that if the opposite, let's say it's found out that she was not mizana, and the husband was making up the whole story, that's always the two sides of the coin. If the husband's lying, he has a din of a mitzi shemra. He defamed her. If he defames her, what's the halacha? He gets malchus, he has to pay meyasela. If it's true and she was mizana, she gets stoned. So says the Gemara, in this case that we have a woman that conceived as a goyis, and then she gave birth as a yid. And you're telling me that she has a din of a skila of that girl's mizana later in life. She has a regular din of a yid and she gets skila. So ask the Gemara, if it's found to not be true, what should the flip side be? That the husband number one should get malchus and number two should have to pay the meyasela. Explains the Gemara, Amar Kro Umesa. No, she's only nisraba. She's only included for a death. Lamisa nisraba of loli kanas. We do not. It's not necessarily two sides of the same coin. We could be nisraba. She's included for punishments, but not that he, the husband, if he becomes chayiv for defaming her, that he would have to pay the kanas. Ask the Gemara, how do you know that the pasuk comes to include a case in which the mother became pregnant as a guy and then gave birth as a yid? Maybe it comes to include a case which gets pregnant as a yid and gives birth as a yid. Answers the Gemara. The obvious tarot, 6 lines down. In that case, she's a full-fledged yid. You don't need a pasuk to include skila in that case. The Gemara persists. The rabbi said, maybe the opposite. Maybe if this woman became pregnant as a guy and gave birth as a guy and then became a giyaris, maybe the pasuk umeis is including that child, if they become a mizana later on in life, that kid will get skila, and not like our Mishnah taught us, strangulation. Imkain be Yisrael maya hanile. Says the Gemara, if that was true, so why would the pasuk say be Yisrael? Be Yisrael means there's some level of a yid, and here there is no level of a yid. And now we continue our discussion that we began about Moitzi Shemra, the laws of a defamer. If a husband claims that the wife committed adultery and he's lying, the halacha we already said is he gets mal because he has to pay a fine. Meya Sela. Says the Gemara, Rav Yezi Rechanina, about 10 lines down, Ha Moitzi Shemra Ali Yisoima Potter. So when his mighty shamra causes a libel, causes a lie, says a girl, an orphan girl, was mizana, it's not true. The halacha is he does not have to pay the fine. Why? Shenamar, the pasuk says, V'nasla aviha naira. You have to give to the father of the child of the naira prat lazusha in la'av. This girl has no father, and therefore there's no din of mighty shamra. Ask the Gemara, Mas Rav Yisbar Rav Vitim Rav Yisbar Zvida. Says in the Torah of Emayin Yemayin Aviyah, it says with regard to pitoy, one who seduces someone else, that if the father refuses, the rabbis, that comes to include Yisaima Liknas. That even a case of Yisaima where she has no father, there still is a din of Kanas by pitoy. The Chamishim Shekel Kesef Divi Rav Yosi Aglili. So I asked the Gemara, so why by us are you saying it's excluded from Kanas? We have a drasha of Amayin Yemayin coming to include from Kanas. Answers the Gemara, he asked and he answers, that the case that we're discussing is where she was mizana, where she was seduced or she was defamed, and then the father died. In that case, then it's not considered v'nasan lavia naira. So that's what we're going to differentiate between the two cases where they all happened while she was a yisaima, or did the party begin? Not the party. Did the story begin while she had a father and only conclude when she has no father? Rava Amar, Rava comes along to argue on Rav Yisrael Chanina Chayiv. Says Rava, in the case of Yisaima, you're chayiv to pay, even though she has no father. Mimai, how do I know this? Midatani Ami, from the Bryce that Ami taught, Besulas Yisrael, V'loi Besulas Gerim. He learns from the pasuk. It says Besulas Yisrael comes to exclude Gerim, and even though a ger has no father, still we need a special pasuk to exclude it. And now the Gemara articulates: if a comparable case of Yisrael, what's a comparable case of Yisrael to a ger? A Yisrael like a ger that has no parents, a Yisaima. So if you're going to tell me the Yisrael is chayiv, now it makes a lot of sense. But we need a special pasuk to teach me that only a Besula Yisrael and not gerim. Ella, but according to your see, Baravin, if you're going to tell me a Yisrael that has no father is a ptur, hashta be Yisrael, palter begerim ibai, but we need a special pastor to tell me gerim. Therefore, says the Gemara, says the Rava, he argues on Baravin, and he learns that even in the case of Yisayim, there is a din of kanas, even though she has no father, there still is a din of kanas to herself. Amar Reish Lakish, continuing the halachais. Amaitzi Shemra, 10 lines to the bottom. The first line is me. If someone defames, someone says that this young little girl was mizana, it's found to not be true, Potter, he does not have to pay the kanash. And Amar v'nosla v'ha naira, naira molia kosim medaber. The apostle says naira in the full with the hay, and therefore it comes to teach us it has to be a naira, not a kitana. Maskala Rav is not happy with Reish Lakish. Time of the Kesubos ha naira. If you look at Tana, is that true? Only from the extra hay. That's how you know it has to be a naira. But if not, you would have thought a Ketana is included. What are you going to do with the pasuk that says that if the matter was true, this matter you didn't find besulim the naira. And you think the naira is the door of the father's house, so it's klua, and she gets skila. If the whole punishment here is skila, it can't be a kitana, because the kitana never gets punished. So how are you telling me that the only way we know the kitana is not included from the extra hanaira can't be kitana lavas ayin shemi? So rather, it comes like Ravach and he explains alakan naira hakol makom shnemer nar afilu kitana mashma. Here it says naira, and the other place says nar means a kitana. That's the way to learn it. But it is true indeed that the Ketana would be excluded because the Ketana is Lav Bas Ein Shem, and we'll pick it up from the Bryce of Shila in the next half, B'siyata Dishmaya.